All right, welcome to your very own deep dive. Today, we're going to explore the life and work of Jeff Baena. You know, the filmmaker who sadly passed away so young, just 47.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you recall, he was also Aubrey Plaza's husband. So we've got a whole bunch of sources here. Wikipedia entries for both of them, some articles about their relationship, and of course, those recent reports about Jeff's passing. And our goal, our mission today, it's to uncover not just like the dry facts, but the real story. Who was Jeff Baena, you know, as an artist, and what made his work with Aubrey Plaza so special, so unique?
You know, one of the things that strikes me right away is how Jeff's career is like almost a classic Hollywood story, right? Like he starts as a production assistant, paying his dues on those big films like Castaway,
right.
And then he works his way up to screenwriter, and then finally he becomes a director.
And I mean, come on, he didn't just co-write any film, right? It was I Heart Huckabees. That's a total cult classic, not your typical Hollywood big budget thing at all.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it really gives you a clue about the kind of filmmaker he was going to become, you know?
Yeah.
Known for those kind of offbeat, dark comedies. And he really had this knack, I think, for attracting a certain type of actor. It's almost like he created a repertory company, you know, for his films.
Yeah.
And Aubrey Plaza, of course, was a key part of that.
Speaking of Aubrey, you know, there's an article here that lays out this timeline of their relationship, and it's fascinating. They met in 2011 and then kept things incredibly private, even after they, you know, got married. Like a decade later, a backyard ceremony. How cool is that?
It seems like the pandemic, of all things, might have been a turning point for them. You know, there's this interview where Aubrey talks about how all that forced togetherness actually brought them closer together.
Yeah, I got to say, the matching tie-dye pajamas at the wedding, that's a pretty fantastic detail.
Oh, for sure.
But okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about life after Beth. Jeff's directorial debut seems like a pretty pivotal moment in his career, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. He wrote that script way back in 2003 after a rough breakup, but he didn't actually direct it until 10 years later. That's a long time.
Yeah, that is a huge gap. What do you make of that? Was he like hesitant to direct? Or was there something else going on?
I mean, it could have been, you know, about finding the right moment, the right resources. But remember, he once said that directing felt more natural to him than writing, that it was all he ever wanted to do. So maybe it was more about, you know, honing his craft, waiting for the right opportunity to really make his vision happen.
So even though he was like really successful as a screenwriter, directing was his true calling. And his films, they drew in this incredible ensemble cast. Allison Brie, Molly Shannon, John C. Reilly. They all appeared in multiple films, clearly drawn to his style.
Yeah, and there's definitely a recurring theme of collaboration in his career, you know, like building a creative family around him. And of course, we can't overlook Allison Brie. I mean, she co-wrote Horse Girl and Spin Me Round with him, which suggests, you know, a much deeper creative partnership, not just acting in his films.
Right. And Horse Girl is so interesting, not just because, you know, Aubrey Plaza gives this amazing acclaimed performance, but also because of its tone, right? That blend of dark humor and real psychological depth. Looking back, it almost feels like a foreshadowing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it does make you wonder how much of their personal lives, their experiences, you know, made their way into the films they created together. Horse Girl, with its themes of mental health and isolation, it definitely takes on a new meaning knowing what we know now about Jeff's struggles.
Yeah. And speaking of those struggles, we can't ignore Aubrey's recent interview with Howard Stern. It was incredibly candid. She talked about feeling lonely at the top and even like doubting the reality of her own feelings. It's heartbreaking, especially now.
It does add another layer of complexity to their relationship, doesn't it? You know, we see this outwardly successful couple, but behind the scenes, there are obviously these deeper struggles, things unspoken. It really makes you think about, you know, the masks we wear, especially in the public eye, and how even the people closest to us might not fully understand what's going on beneath the surface.
It's a stark reminder that outward appearances can be so deceiving.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about Hollywood, you know, the pressure, the constant scrutiny, the expectation to always be on.
It's a tough environment, no doubt. And I think Jeff's films, with their exploration of those darker themes, might have been his way of dealing with those pressures, of finding humor and maybe catharsis in the middle of it all.
Which leads us to the news of his passing. It's just so devastating. Found at home in Los Angeles, and while the details are still kind of coming out, some sources are reporting it as suicide. It's just incredibly sad.
Yeah, it's a profound loss. And what makes it even more poignant is that Aubrey was supposed to present at the Golden Globes the very next day. That contrast, that clash of public celebration and private grief, it's heavy stuff to think about.
It really is. And the family asking for privacy, I think that speaks volumes. You know, it highlights how important it is to respect their space during this time, but it reignites the conversation about mental health.
Yeah.
Especially in those high-pressure industries like Hollywood.
Absolutely. There's a need for more open dialogue, more resources, more understanding. This tragedy reminds us that even those who seem to have it all can be struggling in silence. Horse Girl, man, it really stays with you. And now, knowing what we know about Jeff's passing, some of those scenes, those themes, they just hit differently, you know?
Yeah. It's like you're watching it with this whole new level of understanding,
right.
that exploration of mental health and isolation, that blurred line between what's real and what's fantasy. It all just feels heavier now.
Absolutely. And Aubrey Plaza's performance, wow, she completely embodies this character who's trying to make sense of the world, and you feel for her, even as she, you know, kind of spirals down that rabbit hole of paranoia and delusion.
There's that one scene, right, where she's talking about feeling like she's living in a simulation. It's just so raw, so vulnerable. Knowing about Jeff's own struggles with mental health, it's hard not to wonder if his experiences, you know, informed that scene.
It's tough to say for sure, of course, but it's definitely something to think about. It speaks to the power of art, doesn't it? To reflect our own experiences, to make us think about things in new ways.
And Horse Girl isn't just a powerful film on its own. It's also like this testament to their creative partnership. You know, Jeff and Aubrey, they co-wrote it together, and you can really feel their shared sensibilities in that tone, that dark humor, that approach to such a sensitive topic.
It's a perfect example of how their personal lives and their professional lives were so intertwined. They weren't afraid to explore those tough themes together, to push the boundaries of what comedy could be.
And is this reminder that even in the midst of all that darkness, there can still be beauty, humor, connection.
It's true. Speaking of their collaboration, they work together on other films too, of course.
Oh, right, like The Little Hours, which it's hilarious. Very R-rated, though.
Yeah.
A medieval nunnery. It's definitely not what you'd expect from a period piece like that.
So unexpected, so subversive, and that's what makes it so great. And again, you see that collaboration, right? Alison Brie, Molly Shannon, all those familiar faces.
It's like Jeff created this world where anything was possible, where humor could be found in the most unlikely places.
Yeah.
And where he could just explore the full range of human experience with this group of actors who just trusted him completely.
And that trust shows, doesn't it, in their performances. They're willing to be silly, vulnerable, completely over the top, and it creates this amazing energy on screen, this freedom.
It's infectious, right? You can't help but get swept up in the absurdity of it all.
And I think that's part of Jeff's legacy, that ability to make us laugh at the things that might otherwise scare us or disturb us, to find the humor in the darkness, to remind us that even in the face of death, life can be, well, absurdly funny.
His films are really a testament to the power of laughter, to heal, to connect, to help us make sense of the world.
And to his vision, his willingness to push boundaries, to explore the full spectrum of human emotions with honesty, intelligence, and that wicked sense of humor.
He wasn't afraid to make us squirm a little. To challenge how we see things, to make us think.
And that's what makes his work so lasting. It sticks with you long after the credits roll. Makes you want to revisit certain scenes, to think about those themes again, to appreciate how deep and complex his vision was.
Looking back on his career, it's clear Jeff Baena was a true original, a filmmaker who took risks. Who experimented, who created work that was both hilarious and really moving.
And while his passing is just such a loss, there's some comfort in knowing that his films, they'll continue to entertain, to inspire, to provoke for years to come.
And as we process this loss, it's important to remember, right, that behind every great artist, there's a human story. A life lived, this whole web of relationships that shaped their work.
And for Jeff, his relationship with Aubrey Plaza was clearly a huge source of inspiration and support.
Oh, absolutely. They were partners in life and in art. And that shared creative journey is something to celebrate, even as we mourn his loss.
And I think it's important to acknowledge the impact of his passing on. on those who worked with him closely. His collaborators, his friends, his family, they're the ones who knew him best, who shared his passion, his humor, his creativity.
Their grief is unimaginable, and our thoughts are with them during this time.
And moving forward, I think it's crucial that we keep talking about mental health to break the stigma, to create a more supportive environment for people who are struggling.
Because sometimes even the people who seem to have it all, who make us laugh, who bring joy into our lives, they're fighting battles we know nothing about.
It's true, and it's on all of us to be more aware, more compassionate, more willing to reach out, to offer support.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Jeff Baena's life and work, I want to leave our listeners with a few things to think about, some questions to consider as they go back and watch his films.
What are some of those recurring themes that you notice in his work? How does his sense of humor change over time? And how does knowing about his death, how does that affect how you see his films?
Those are great questions. And I would also add, think about the role of collaboration in his career. How did working with actors like Aubrey Plaza, Alison Brie, Molly Shannon, how did that shape his vision? And what can we learn from how he built that creative community around him?
And lastly, I think it's worth asking yourself, how do Jeff's films make you feel? Do they make you laugh? Do they make you uncomfortable? Do they make you think about life and death differently?
Because in the end, I think that's how you measure an artist's success, isn't it? Their ability to connect with us on that emotional level, to spark those conversations, to leave a lasting mark on the world.
And Jeff Baena did all of that in his own unique and unforgettable way.
So let's take a moment to appreciate his talent, the joy he brought us, the lasting legacy of his films.
And let's keep supporting those artists who challenge us, who make us think, who remind us of the beauty and the absurdity of being human.
It's kind of crazy how, knowing about the person behind the art can totally change how we see it. We can't help but look at those themes of isolation and delusion in Horse Girl differently now.
It's like there's this whole other layer added to it now. Makes it more powerful, but also, I don't know, maybe a little more heartbreaking too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it makes you think, are all artists pulling from their own lives, their own struggles, even when they're, trying to make us laugh?
Well, I think it's safe to say most do on some level, at least. I mean, it's what gives their work that authenticity, that sense of truth that connects with the audience. But of course, there's also the skill, the craft, taking those raw emotions and shaping them into something entertaining, something that people can relate to.
And Jeff, he definitely had that skill. He could take these dark, sometimes even uncomfortable themes and make them into comedies that were funny, but also made you think.
It's a tough balance, right? To deal with serious stuff without losing that comedic edge, but he did it over and over again.
And I think that's part of the reason his films have such a dedicated following. They're different. They're not just, mindless entertainment. They make you think, they make you feel things. They stick with you.
Yeah, there's this lingering quality to his work, isn't there? This sense that there's always more to uncover, more layers to peel back. And I think that's what keeps people coming back, wanting to see those films again and find something new in them.
It's like he's inviting us into this conversation, about life, about death, about everything, and it doesn't end when the movie's over.
Yeah, it's like he's planted these little seeds of thought in our minds, and they just keep growing even as we go through our own lives.
God, I love that analogy. So true. It makes me appreciate even more the power of art to connect us. To make us feel less alone.
Because at the end of the day, I think that's what Jeff was going for, right? To create that sense of shared humanity, to remind us that we're all in this together. We're all dealing with those same big questions, the same ups and downs, the same crazy stuff that life throws at you.
And to do it all with a sense of humor, a little wink. Like he's saying, hey, it's all right to laugh at the darkness, to find the funny side of it.
Because sometimes laughing is the only way to handle it, the only way to keep going.
And I think that's a beautiful thing to leave behind, a body of work that makes us laugh, but also makes us think, and reminds us that we're not alone.
Yeah, it's a gift that'll keep on giving, inspiring, new filmmakers and audiences for years to come.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
Yeah.
Jeff's passing is a tragedy. It's a reminder how fragile life is and how important it is to be aware of mental health. But it's also, I think, a call to action.
A call to to be more present, more compassionate, more supportive of everyone around us, because, you never know what someone might be going through.
And just a small act of kindness, listening to someone, showing that you care, it can make a huge difference. So let's honor Jeff's legacy by spreading that message of love and support, and by keeping the conversation about mental health going.
And by celebrating the power of art, right? To heal, to connect us, to remind us of the beauty and the absurdity of being human.
Thank you all for joining us on this deeply personal journey. We hope it's given you some new perspectives and inspired you to check out Jeff Baena's films. Maybe you'll see them a little differently now.